What exactly is a true calling and how on earth do we find it? Join me, Annabelle Beckwith, as I speak to numerous women who are on that very journey and from whom we can all learn how to find our own true calling. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Annabelle Beckwith. Now, our theme today is starting a revolution. My guest is London-based Emmie Faust. Now, 20 years ago, Emmie and her team secured the largest single amount of funding that anybody at that point had achieved on Dragon's Den, the UK version of Shark Tank. Since that, she has started, grown and sold multiple businesses, and she is the mother of 4. Along the journey, Emmie became annoyed at something. Something started to frustrate her. Something started to make her angry. And that was the way that she saw female entrepreneurs being treated by investors and by a certain quarter of the male business world, shall we say. And this frustration led her to set up Female Founders Rise. Emmie is leading a revolution. Let's hear what she has to say. So welcome to the show, Emmie Faust. So Emmie is the mother of 4, a serial entrepreneur, an angel investor, and the founder of Female Founders Rise. Emmie, how you find the time for all of that, I have no idea. But please tell us a little bit about your story. What has brought you to this point?
I was just going to say, this week is a busy week. We've got 3 birthdays in the house, and I always remember this week and Christmas week is when I should do no work at all, because it's also Easter. So there's always like the breaking up, the Easter bonnets, the birthdays, the birthday parties, the birthday presents. And this is the week that I always normally feel overwhelmed. And I remind myself not to do any work. It's interesting. I think this year, for some reason, I'm feeling more on top of it all. So that's good. How did I get to this point right here now? Well, at the moment, I have really quite changed what I'm doing with my life in the last sort of since the summer. So what's that, the last 8 months? Because previous to that, for the sort of 18 months before that, sorry, I wasn't well. I had long COVID. I had stress. I had a breakdown, and I struggled with all my hormones. It was all a sort of perfect cacophony, or a not perfect cacophony, should we say, of everything coming together, which left me in quite a bad way. And I just decided at that point that I would stop doing my consultancy, which I'd been doing for eight years, and I'd focus on the things that brought me joy. And in September last year, so we're now March, April, I decided I was going to start investing in female founders, and that was really the start of it. That's where everything has changed. Since then, I think I counted 17, sometimes I think it's 14, but I think I counted 17 yesterday, investments in female founders. That's really small amounts, anything from sort of 2 to 10 grand each time. Sometimes I do that on my own, and sometimes I do it as part of a collective. And the other thing that I did was I was just really felt this passion and connection working with women. As a woman myself and a mum of 4, and having set up, scaled and sold multiple businesses in the past, I just really sort of felt like I had an affinity, and I really wanted to help more women find financial freedom through entrepreneurship. I think, I have got financial freedom, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful I can invest. I'm grateful that I can make these decisions about my work and where I put my money. And that all comes from obviously working hard and having some luck and everything else, from the ages of 25 to sort of 35 when I was growing my businesses. So that's where I am now. And with this idea about helping female founders came this idea quite a while ago, but I never sort of managed to bring it to life because I was too busy doing other stuff, that I'd love to create the sort of go-to resource for female founders, like a hub, which would become the global go-to solution for female founders, keeping it very chilled and just focusing on the UK right now. But basically, it's the place that if you're a female founder, you would just go and everyone would say you're part of Female Founders Rise, because it would be a supportive community there's curated resources, there's masterclasses, there's help with your pitch decks, there's community meetups, helping with fundraising and sort of education on growing and a profitable and a viable, sustainable long-term business. That was my idea, and I just decided that I was going to go all in and focus on that in September last year.
Wow. So, crikey, that's quite an extensive story. You did say, well, my story could be quite long when we were chatting before this. Before we pressed record, and I'll keep it short. And some of the things that you say, Emmie, almost in a, and then this happened, and then that happened. I just want to pick up on some of those because there are certain key phrases, like you had your own consultancy, you started up and scaled multiple businesses. You have financial freedom. Now, for a lot of people, these are things that they are aspiring to, even like starting their own business and so forth, growing and scaling a business, having financial freedom, all of those types of things. And it's almost like you've done all that, and now this is the purpose. This is the purpose, kind of beyond that.
Yeah.
What was it about your experience going through all of those businesses and your consultancy that led you to form Female Founders Rise? What did you notice about the way in which you were treated as a woman in business, that other women were treated as a woman in business, perhaps particularly when they're looking for investment, that made you think, because I know that a lot of what you talk about online and publicly is around the disparity between the way in which male business owners and female business owners are treated, particularly by investors.
So it's interesting. So the successful business we had were bootstrapped, but we did go on Dragon's Den and get funding for that. And actually, I did most of the pitch on Dragon's Den, and we got the biggest single investment ever. So obviously that wasn't a problem. I was a woman, and I did 90% of the pitch, and I got the funding. We got the funding.
Yeah, just to interrupt you there. Dragon's Den is the UK version of Shark Tank. So yeah. So that's another story. Yeah,
that's another story. That was 20 years ago. So we got the biggest investment at the time ever of 200 grand. I did a podcast yesterday talking all about that, how I basically just went on for a bit of a laugh and didn't even have a business plan, but I managed to. I did economics, accounting, and law at uni, so I'd managed to flip all the numbers around so that it actually equated to a £2 million valuation. And that business actually ended up failing. But anyway, let's go back. So in the den, I wasn't treated any differently, but afterwards, in some of the board meetings, I think I was treated differently. What I've really noticed is in board meetings, and look, I've sat in quite a lot of board meetings, the board meetings of my own businesses, the business that acquired us, as a woman, and then I've also done a stint on an advisory board. As a woman in a board meeting, you are not listened to, you are ignored, you're not asked for your opinion unless you literally barge in. You're often spoken over, you're expected to take the notes because you're the secretary. And one board meeting that I was an advisor for, and this is one of the things that really got to me, and I was like, I'm going to do something about this now. I'm not going to sit on a board and be ignored. I'm going to set up my own board. I'm going to set up my own business, and the people on my board are going to be listened to, and there's going to be a diverse mix. And that's what Female Founders Rise is about. But, just being ignored, even like you walk in and you say, hello, let's call him John. How are you today? And barely even looks up from his notes to sort of say hello. Just and there'd be like male investors, pale male styles, and me. And it was like I didn't have any expertise, but actually I was the one that knew more than any of them. I was a digital growth expert. I'd scaled and sold multiple businesses in that space. I knew what I was doing, but people weren't listening to me. And I felt really disrespected. And I felt really annoyed. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to quit this. So I quit that. I said to them, I'm not interested anymore. It wasn't helping my... that was contributing to my stress, because obviously, going to board meetings when people are ignoring you and basically disrespecting you. And so I just thought, I've had enough of this. The way that women are treated in board meetings, the way there's not enough women in leadership. Then I was reading all these articles about only 2% of VC funding going to women. And I could see all these female founders getting upset and not understanding the stats. And I was like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to understand, is this the reality? And why is only 2% of female founders getting funded? So, and then I thought, well, I'm going to do something about it. I can do something about it. And that, to be honest, was naive, because I probably can't do anything. I can do small things, and I am doing small things, and I will continue to do small things. But it's not something that I can do on my own. And it's, as someone said to me, this is a marathon, not a sprint. It's not like there's an answer that you could just go and say, oh, hang on a minute, I found out what the problem is. Yeah. So in tandem with setting up Female Founders Rise, and that's obviously why I decided I did only invest in female founders, because I was like, why is everyone putting their money into white male founders? I mean, that's the problem. Yep. So the pale male style investors are investing in either VC funds or businesses that look like them. And then, the bigger investors are investing in the VC funds that are run by the pale male stales, because that feels safe to them. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done around that. Obviously, not all VC funds are the same. Look, there's lots of great ones that are really focused on helping female founders, but there's also a lot that are paying a lot of lip service and pretend they do, and they can't even come to our our female founder rights meetups. So I would say there's a mix. There's also lots of funds that are setting up particularly to help underrepresented founders or female founders or Black founders and things like that. So that's really good. But I think, it's across the board. It's not just the funding. It's also, the board meetings, being ignored in board meetings and your voice not being heard. And that's not just for women. That's for all underrepresented groups as well. And that's why we need more diversity on boards. And I think that's why I was just like, I'm just going to set up my own thing. And so with Female Founders Rise, we have a whole mix of people on our advisory panel and on our advisory board. And, we really listen to them, and everyone's voice is heard.
Yeah, absolutely superb. And it's just picking up on a couple of things there. Obviously, I can hear your passion and the sense of outrage that why is this happening? This is completely unjustified. You are the person who is the knowledge holder in that meeting. And yet, for whatever reason, your opinions are being overlooked. I also like this. It's the little bit of, it's not subversive because it's a thing, but when you're saying the usual pale male stale, I did hear that correctly.
Yeah, I didn't make that up. The pale male stales. I think that's a bit of a it's a bit of hot. There's obviously lots of white old men who are not the pale male stales. There's obviously a lot of old white men who are lovely, but there's also a lot, and unfortunately in those board meetings it was those. And in the business that bought us, when I was sitting on the board and I was being disrespected or told that my views were totally wrong, and in fact they were right. It was all around digital marketing, which I knew loads more about than them anyway. They bought us because they didn't have any digital expertise. But they were sort of so old-fashioned that they couldn't understand that a young woman, age 35, might know more about them, about a particular topic. They were just like, well, I know what I'm talking about. I've made loads of money. I'm an investor. And it's like that kind of arrogance. Now, there's absolutely there's so many great men involved in Female Founders Rise. There's so many amazing men, and they all want change as well. There's so many men in VC who have contacted me saying, I don't want to work for, a VC fund that is not forward thinking, is not investing in women, and they're offering up their ideas about how we can improve things. They come to the meetups. They are the proactive ones, but then also there's quite a lot that aren't. And there's quite a lot that sign up to the Women in Investing Code. And apparently that's just, a tick box. And interestingly, every year, more and more people have signed up to the Women in Investing Code, but then the amount of funding going to women hasn't really changed. So, and actually someone who someone in my network, let's say, who's very well connected, basically told me that doesn't mean much. There's all these people signing up to it because they need to be seen to. But, what we want to see is actually action. It's not intent. We want to see people investing. We want to see people coming to Female Founders Rise meetups and opening doors and building relationships with female founders. And we just heard that one of our Female Founders Rise members got funding as a direct result of one of our events. They got 180 grand, which is amazing.
Fantastic.
In February, from a February event. So, and that actually wasn't from an investor. That was from a door opener, someone who can open doors. So what we're saying is people who work in VC, people who work in the ecosystem, they've got to be an ally, a champion. They've got to come and try and also help do the work. It's not just us as women that need to do the work. It's not the female founders, it's everyone.
Yeah, and that's such a great point, because oftentimes, and with the work that I do, working with entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs, and specifically looking at leadership development and business growth, oftentimes the programs and the initiatives that you see geared towards this whole arena are for the women. How to put together your pitch deck, how to attract funding, what to do. And yet when you look at those statistics, as you've said, Emmie, it's like women aren't the problem here. There's something in the broader ecosystem that is holding women back and holding women down. And yet, as you say, there are men who are saying, no, actually, this needs to be a real thing, not just with women founders, but with women from diverse backgrounds, different age groups, and across the whole demographic, but not just ticking the diversity box. Yep, I've done that. I've gone to but it's the inclusion part of diversity and inclusion, isn't it? Where it's not just, yes, we've got these people around the table that tick the boxes. We are listening to them. We are actually listening to them.
And you know what I did? There was a great article in Harvard Business Review about it's not having a diverse board, it's having an inclusive board, which was exactly that. You can't just have people on your board as a tick box. Now, I was on that advisory board, probably from their view as a tick box. So I read that article. It was really good. I shared it on LinkedIn, and then I sent it to the ex-chairman, who was a chairman at the time. And I just said, of this company, and I just said, I thought this was really valuable and I thought you might like to read it. And to be fair to him, he came back, but I was just a bit like, you know what, your board was not inclusive. I'm not being horrible, but I'm just sending you an article that I really think you should read, because I think you should educate yourself. Because, you know, he was a sort of 60-year-old white guy who obviously just thought, oh, Emmie's, you know, there to tick a box. So yes, that was a really interesting article, actually, in the Harvard Business Review. It's about being inclusive, isn't it? It's not just having a tick box. And we're fed up of being that tick. I'm fed up of being a tick box.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And same here. It's I was speaking to somebody, it was middle of last year, who was talking about a particular position. He says, well, we want a woman and you're mixed race. And it was like, oh, great. 2 ticks for the price of one. Yeah. Superb. Nothing to do with, as you say, 20 years expertise, you know, and the actual value that you bring into that particular situation.
That's incredibly rude.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, it wasn't straight out of the bat. It was part of the conversation, but it wasn't like, great. Hey, Annabelle, I noticed that you're
amazing. Yeah, you're amazing, Annabelle, and you'd be such a great part of our team.
Yes, there was that kind of conversation, you know, a little bit, and you think, oh, thank you so much, and it's like, and then we get to tick these boxes. Okay, fair enough. It's I suppose it's just one of those things, really. But what do you feel needs to happen in the broader arena? Obviously, although your network is called Female Founders Rise, you have male members who are thinking, yes, this is an area that really needs attention. What more can we all be doing? Because, as you say, it's not just about you. It's not just about me. It's not just about FenixTV. It's not just about She Rises as a network. It's individuals doing things. It's about a collective movement forward to actually change the status quo. What can be done, A, with and for women, and what can be done with and for men?
I would say,
or to gather the support of those who are a bit more with it. And actually recognise that this is something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. So say for the women, we're trying to do lots of those things within Female Founders Rise, the things like the help with the pitch deck practice, the help with the funding side, also the help with the community side, because it's really important that we connect with each other and we have a support network, and that we collaborate with female founders and with supporters and with cheerleaders and with investors and everything else. The networking is key. So I think championing female founders, I think making sure that female founders are properly included on panels, not one, like 2, 3, 4, that they're included in articles. I spoke to this guy from a tech publication who said, oh, I need to get in touch with you because the last 25 people that we've interviewed for our, you know, tech founder highlight every week has been a man. I was like, that's terrible. I mean, it's not difficult to find some female tech founders. I've got about 150. I've got about 500 probably in my network. And then, interestingly, I said, would you like to do a feature on female founders' rights? And he's just totally ignored me. But it's like, well, we're helping female tech founders, and you can't even do a little article on us. So it's stuff like that. It's like, get more women published on, you know, in newspapers, on media. Like, let's hear about people always sort of like talking about these great male founders, and they sort of just slip one woman in on the end of the list. It's not, we need to be celebrating way more women. We need to be buying from more female founders. We need to be mentoring them. We need to be supporting them. We need to be getting more women on boards, because that helps. We need to be getting more women into VC. We need to be getting more women into VC at the point of those who are making decisions, not just at the bottom of the, the lower levels of the business. I think there's also a thing about, you know, as women, a lot of us are building more purpose-led businesses. We've got less ego. We're less maybe driven to have, you know, these big unicorns. So actually we're really conservative, and we're very honest and sort of transparent in what we believe we can achieve. And if we say we're going to make £1 million, we probably are going to make £1 million. We might make a bit more. Whereas men obviously quite often will exaggerate, or, you know, they're able to sort of, you know, be more gung-ho with numbers and things like that. So there is definitely a bit around giving women more confidence. And interestingly, in the pitch practice, Dan, who's one of the VCs, was said that all the women came in and sort of apologized at the beginning before they did their pitch and said, I'm really sorry, like, either like this isn't going to be good enough, or I haven't done this or whatever. And he was like, you've got to stop apologizing.
Stop that. You know? That's the problem right there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, I noticed that a while ago. I just kept saying sorry to everyone all the time. It was almost like, sorry, this is late. Sorry, this, and sorry, I haven't got back to you. And you're almost like apologizing. It's just like part of your vocab, you know. It's almost like inbuilt. You know how people say literally all the time. It's almost like you just apologize for, I don't know, being a woman. So I do think there's a lot we could do. I mean, I just think, why don't we just say everyone invest 50% in women, 50% in men?
Yeah.
And then within that mix, then let's try and make sure we're investing in, you know, the right mix of Black founders. And the problem is that people say there isn't enough deal flow. There's not enough female founders coming through. And that probably is true to a point. There's less businesses set up by women. So we also need to encourage more women to get into entrepreneurship. And we need to encourage more women to get into tech, because that's a big part of, you know, what a lot of people want to invest in. And also, it's very difficult if you are a woman. You also have a lot of other challenges, like bringing up the family, normally leading the home, all these other things, which are just so demanding on our time. And like the burnout is real. I mean, like the number of female founders that are, well, all founders. I mean, founder burnout is huge, but then add to that all the additional pressures you have as a woman, and it's just too much. And we're not supporting women. We're not supporting them, you know, with the childcare, with all of these extra things. It's hard.
It is. And I heard somewhere, I can't remember where I heard it. But somebody said to me that the notional 40-hour work week was invented at a time where one person in the family, the man usually, was going out to work. Another person in the family, usually the woman, was at home doing everything else. And so there's that sort of societal thing whereby women are working full time, but also, and statistics bear this out. This isn't just anecdotal.
Yeah, exactly.
Statistics bear out that actually women do the bulk of the stuff in the home and with the children and so forth. And so forth as well. So there's those societal things. I wonder whether the consistent apologizing is a women's thing or a British thing.
Someone else.
I've been teased in the States for going sorry, terribly sorry, everyone. But either which way, I think it does lead to the point of like, mind your language, because if you're consistently using submissive language or apologetic language in whatever context, and that becomes a behavioral pattern, that's what you're saying to yourself, and you are therefore adopting an apologetic demeanor or a more submissive demeanor. And it's also the impression that you convey to other people, isn't it? So there's obviously things that women can be doing on a mindset level, on a behavioral level, and so forth. But also, as you say, in the broader vista, changing changing attitudes and changing society. And sometimes I think if we look back at history, we think, the women's rights movements has come such a long way. And then sometimes you see items in the news or statistics like this, and you think, ladies, we still have a long way to go.
I know. And it's depressing. And I sometimes say to the Female Founders Rise members, like, we've got to just not ignore those stats. Like, obviously, we're trying to work on those stats, but you can't believe that you're not going to get funding because of that. And almost like that will just create anger. I can see people getting really angry. And I'm almost like, I've had enough of reading all that stuff. I just want to see people taking action. I don't want to see people talking about their intent. I sat on a panel the other day with some VCs, and they were all talking about how they signed up to Women in Investing Code, and I was like, got a bit cross at the end, not with them, but just the whole thing. And I was like, that's great, this is all intent, it's not action. So I just want to see action. To stop talking about the fact that you've signed up to do something, or that you're doing some office hours or whatever. I mean, that's great, but actually really what is great is not just doing some office hours for female founders. It's doing things that are making a tangible difference, that are actually going to lead to either them getting funded or them, doing better understanding the fundamentals of business so that they can run a profitable, sustainable, viable, long-term business and pay tax and employ people. I mean, I paid 400 grand in tax when I sold my business. Why do people not want more female founders? We're contributing to the economy. It's absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, absolutely. And a key point there, and I think it's a useful one to wrap up on, is not just intent, but action. And actually, that's true in this environment. It's true in pretty much any environment, isn't it? There's one thing, ticking the box, thinking about it, setting an intention, quite another thing to put in the spade work and actually make things happen. Emmie, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm, thank goodness that there's people like you. There's organisations like Female Founders Rise. There's organisations like She Rises. There is a cohort of women and men who are pushing forward into this particular area. So thank you so much for being a revolutionary in this area, Emmie Faust.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Annabelle.
I love the power of open and honest conversations like that. And there's, again, so many things that we can take from Emmie's experience that we can apply to our own lives and learn from her and be inspired by her. One of the things that really leapt out at me was the fact that it's negative emotions that actually prompted Emmie to found Female Founders Rise. It was the fact that she was frustrated and annoyed at being overlooked and not listened to that made her say, right, I am going to do something to address this. And another factor is that she didn't look around to see who else was coming with her. At that particular point, she said, I am going to do something about this. I might not be able to do it on my own, but I am going to do something about this. That was a really bold choice. And in making that bold choice, what Emmie is now doing is building a tribe around her of women who share the same values and are on the same journey. And I think that's something we can all learn from. Sometimes we need to look around us and go, right, nobody else, me, I am going to move forward in this way. And once we nail our colours to the mast, others rally to that banner and our tribe begins to grow. And that tribe is the one that will support us on our journey forward. Friends, whatever you are doing today, choose to take your own steps forward towards your true calling.